Welcome! This lecture provides a detailed examination of three critical no-fault liability standards within the law of torts: strict liability, absolute liability, and occupier's liability. Our objective is to analyze their principles, landmark cases, and distinctions, providing a comprehensive resource for your LL.B. studies.
The agenda for our analysis is structured as follows. We will begin with the foundational concept of no-fault liability. Second, we will explore the classic rule of strict liability as established in Rylands. Following this, we will examine India's evolution of this principle into absolute liability in the Mehta case. Fourth, we will compare these standards directly. Fifth, we will analyze the distinct rules for occupier's liability, and we will conclude with a consolidated revision for examination purposes.
Let us begin with Section 1, Introduction to No-Fault Liability. Here, we will explore the core legal principle where an individual can be held responsible for causing harm, even in the absence of any negligence or wrongful intent on their part. This concept is fundamental to the doctrines that follow.
The core principle is captured in the Latin legal maxim sic utere tuo ut alienum non laedas. This translates to, enjoy your own property in such a manner as not to injure that of another. This maxim establishes that one person's property rights end where another's begin, and forms the ethical and legal foundation for our discussion.
We now turn to our first major doctrine in Section 2, strict liability. This standard was defined by the landmark 19th-century English case of Rylands versus Fletcher. Let us examine how this legal rule was established and the specific conditions required for its application.
The rule of strict liability is a principle of accountability for introducing a risk. If a person brings something dangerous onto their land for their own purposes, something not naturally there, and that thing escapes and causes damage, they are held responsible. Proof of negligence is not required. The act of accumulating the risk makes that person liable. In India, this principle is applied in statutes such as the Railways Act and the Carriers Act.
For a claim of strict liability to succeed, three essential conditions must be satisfied. First, a dangerous thing. This refers to substances that are inherently risky if they escape, such as large volumes of water or industrial chemicals. Second, an escape. The dangerous thing must move from the area under the defendant's control to an area outside their control. Third, a non-natural use of land. This refers not to ordinary domestic use, but to a special or extraordinary use for the location, such as constructing a large industrial reservoir.
The seminal case that established this rule is Rylands versus Fletcher, 1868. The issue is a mill owner liable for water escaping a reservoir and flooding a neighbor's mine despite having no personal negligence. The rule applied. The court applied the principle of strict liability for the escape of dangerous things brought onto land for non-natural use. Application: the defendant built a reservoir over old, unknown, disused shafts. Water burst through these shafts and flooded the plaintiff's mine. Even though the defendant used independent contractors and was not personally at fault, he introduced the risk for his own benefit. Conclusion: the House of Lords held the defendant liable. He was responsible for the natural consequences of the escape.
The rule of strict liability is not absolute. The law recognizes 5 key exceptions. 1. Plaintiff's own default. 2. Vis Major, or act of God, where the escape was caused by unforeseeable natural forces. 3. Consent of the plaintiff, where the plaintiff consented to the presence of the dangerous thing. 4. Act of a third party, if the escape was caused by the unforeseeable act of a stranger. And 5. Statutory authority, if the defendant's activity was authorized by law.
We will now move to Section 3 and examine how the Indian judiciary adapted strict liability to create a more stringent standard, absolute liability, also known as the Mehta rule. This is a significant Indian legal innovation developed to address the dangers posed by modern hazardous industries.
The rule of absolute liability is in essence strict liability with all exceptions removed. It is an Indian judicial standard for industries engaged in hazardous activities, and its defining feature is that no exceptions are permitted. The rule is founded on 2 core principles. First, enterprise liability, which holds that a company creating a hazardous risk for profit owes an absolute duty to the community. Second, the Polluter Pays Principle. This doctrine was later reinforced by the Public Liability Insurance Act of 1991.
This rule was established in landmark cases. First, in MC Mehta versus Union of India. Following an oleum gas leak, the Supreme Court ruled that a hazardous industry could not use the Rylands exceptions to evade liability.
It created the rule of absolute liability, stating the old exceptions were inapplicable to inherently dangerous activities. This principle was then applied in the Bhopal gas leak case, Union Carbide Corporation versus Union of India, where the court affirmed the rule of absolute liability, leading to a substantial settlement to compensate victims. These cases reformed tort law for hazardous industries in India.
Having examined the Rylands and Mehta rules independently, we will now, in Section 4, place them in direct comparison. This side-by-side analysis is crucial for understanding their precise distinctions, which is a frequent subject of legal examination. Let us analyze the key differences. Regarding exceptions, Rylands allows 5 defenses. Mehta permits no defenses. Concerning type of use, Rylands applies for a non-natural use of land, while Mehta targets inherently dangerous or hazardous activities. Regarding the scope of harm, Rylands requires an escape from the premises, but under Mehta, the enterprise is liable for harm to anyone, even those inside the premises. Finally, concerning compensation, under strict liability, damages are compensatory, but under absolute liability, they can be exemplary, reflecting the enterprise's ability to pay. We will now shift our focus for Section 5. We are moving from dangerous things that escape from a property to the dangers existing on the property itself. This is the domain of occupier's liability, the duty of care that a person in control of a premises owes to their visitors.
Occupier's liability is the legal responsibility of an occupier, defined as the person with sufficient control over a premises, for physical harm caused to visitors by the state of those premises. This applies to land, buildings, and other structures. In England, this area of law is governed by the Occupiers Liability Act of 1977.
The law does not impose a uniform duty of care upon the occupier for all entrants. A legal hierarchy of visitors exists, and the standard of care varies depending on the visitor's classification. The primary categories are the invitee, the licensee, and the trespasser. Children are treated as a special class, warranting the highest degree of care. Let us examine the duty owed to each.
We begin with lawful visitors. First is the invitee, who enters for a purpose of common economic interest with the occupier. The duty is to take reasonable care to protect the invitee from unusual dangers which the occupier knows of or ought to know of. Compare this to the licensee, who enters with permission for their own purposes. The duty is lower, to warn the licensee of concealed dangers or latent defects of which the occupier has actual knowledge. The distinction rests on what the occupier should know versus what they actually know. The duty owed to persons not lawfully on the premises is distinct. For trespassers, the occupier is prohibited from intentionally causing harm or setting a trap. A separate duty applies to structures adjoining a highway. An occupier must maintain their property so that it does not become a danger to users of the public way, as established in the case of Subagwanti versus Municipal Corporation. A special, higher duty of care is owed to children. The law recognizes that children can be drawn to dangerous objects, giving rise to the doctrine of attractive nuisance. In Glasgow Corporation versus Taylor, the issue was the corporation's liability for a child's death after he ate poisonous berries in a public park. The conclusion was that the corporation was liable because it failed to fence off this tempting but deadly hazard, which it should have known would attract a child. We have now analyzed the 3 major doctrines. To conclude, we will proceed to our final section, revision and analysis. Here, we will consolidate the key principles and frameworks for examination purposes.
This flowchart provides a diagnostic tool for legal analysis. First, does the scenario involve a hazardous industry operating for profit? If yes, the principle is absolute liability. If no, ask the second question. Did a dangerous thing escape from the property and cause harm? If so, the principle is strict liability, and its exceptions must be considered. If the harm was caused by a static hazard on the land itself, then you must apply the principles of occupier's liability and determine the legal status of the visitor.
For final revision, these are the core elements. Strict liability is defined by escape plus non-natural use plus a no-fault standard. Absolute liability is defined by a hazardous activity plus the principle of enterprise liability plus the polluter pays principle. Finally, occupier's liability is defined by the hierarchy of visitors and the corresponding duties owed to each. Understanding these distinctions is key to appreciating how tort law balances property rights with public safety. This concludes the lecture.